Hey guys, how's it going? It's Jay here, and welcome back to another episode of Take 2. In this episode, I'll be reviewing the Schiit Ragnarok 2 fully loaded integrated amplifier, and just like the previous Bifrost 2 review I did, this one's reviewed by Doug Schneider on SoundStageHifi.com on April 1st, 2020, under his System 1 column. So if you're interested in reading his review, feel free to visit SoundStageHifi.com or click on the link below this video. So the Schiit Ragnarok 2 is the successor to the original Ragnarok, and there are many changes to the Ragnarok 2, both on the physical and technical side. We will discuss more of the technical side throughout the review, but physically, the Ragnarok 2 now has an external heatsink, which means better heat dissipation, and I think this was to direct those complaints of the original Ragnarok getting really hot, although I never personally thought the original Ragnarok got that hot before. It also has a new chassis design, and according to Schiit Audio, this new chassis reduces cost and labor, which can be transferred into the pricing of the unit. And honestly, I like the new chassis much better. It's very solid, and I like the subtle differences much better. So the Schiit Ragnarok 2 is an integrated amplifier, but just like the original Ragnarok, it's more than just a stereo integrated amplifier. It's also a very good, powerful headphone amplifier with a 1/4 inch and balanced XLR headphone outputs. Now, as far as the power ratings go, the amplifier outputs 60 watts into 8 ohms and 100 watts into 4 ohms in class AB, which doesn't seem like a lot, especially in comparison to amplifiers that output like 300 watts or 400 watts these days. But in my experience, maybe perhaps due to the chunky 600 VA transformer on the Ragnarok 2, it can drive some of the magnet pan speakers and many of the demanding speakers with serious dynamics, transparency, and finesse. Personally, I tried the magnet pan with the LRS 0.7i, 1.7i, and the Ragnarok can drive the LRS and the 0.7i, but not the 1.7i. And in my personal opinion, I liked the Ragnarok 2 better than the Hagel H90, and would even put it in even grounds with the Hagel H120 as far as the amplifier section is concerned. I mostly used my Tecton lower speakers, which are on the sensitive side, and I thought that to be a great match, and because the Ragnarok 2 is such a clean sounding amplifier, it worked just fine with a sensitive speaker without terrible noise floor. It has two versions. There's just an amp version, which is priced at $1,500, or the fully loaded version, which retails for $300 more at $1,800. The one I have here is the fully loaded version, which is the same as the just an amp version, but has the moving magnet phono stage and multi-bit DAC in place of the extra 2 RCA inputs in the just an amp version. The DAC and phono stage is modular, which means that it can be switched out later if Schiit Audio decides to come up with upgrades, and this also means if you have the just an amp version, you can make it into a fully loaded version for $350 more. But honestly speaking, while I think the DAC and phono stage on the fully loaded version is decent, I personally think that this amplifier has far more potential and can benefit from a better DAC or phono stage, and especially for people that's chasing for better sound quality, I think they would be better off getting the just an amp version with a higher quality DAC and phono stage right from the start for just a little more. At least that's what I would do. Also, this has to do with flexibility too, because the DAC only has a USB input. With the fully loaded version, there's no coax or optical in case you need it. Same thing with the phono, which only accepts moving magnet cartridges. I would personally recommend something like the Bifrost 2 DAC that I reviewed, or the Schiit Mani, which allows you to both use moving magnet and moving coil cartridges for improvement both in sound quality and flexibility with both inputs and cartridge choices. And not everyone has a turntable setup or a digital setup. A lot of people have one or the other. So going with just an amp version gives you more flexibility with allocating your budget in the right part of your system as well. As for my listening tests, for the most part, other than the time I was testing the phono and the DAC in the Ragnarok 2, I was playing Rune using Inuit Zen Mini Mark III streamer and analog out to the Ragnarok 2. So I was testing mostly the just an amp section. I honestly prefer the sound of the Ragnarok 2 much more than the original Ragnarok. It's more dynamic, cleaner, more engaging, more exciting, more air, and seamless extension in the high frequencies, while retaining the smooth mid-range and authority in the bass of the original Ragnarok. In fact, I think even the sound staging and focus of the instruments and vocals within the soundstage has also improved quite a bit. And it's a fun sounding amplifier with a big sound and incredible dynamics and a bit of excitement in the upper mid-range. Now, Ragnarok 2 is also an amplifier that won't lie to you if you play recordings that were recorded with a bit of emphasis on excitement, like some modern recordings, for example. It will translate those sibilances exactly as seen, and it may come across a bit lean in the upper mid-range on certain recordings. Now, as a headphone amplifier, it outputs 3 watts into 300 ohms in balanced and 350 milliwatts into 300 ohms in single-ended, which is pretty powerful. And the Ragnarok 2 operates in Class A up to 1 watt, which means most headphones you'll use, you will be likely that it will be driving in Class A mode. Both balanced and quarter-inch headphone outputs sounded great, but I found that the balanced XLR output was more clear sounding and better driving capability for the headphones I own and use personally. Now, I mainly used it with my Sennheiser HD600 because it's something I use on a daily basis, and I know the sound pretty well by now since I had it for over 5 years. The HD600 is known for their neutral sound characteristics, and when plugged into the Ragnarok 2, the sound was a lot more engaging and exciting with incredible macro and micro dynamics. I also tried the Ragnarok 2 with the Odyssey LCD3 headphones, which I've owned for a very long time as well, and again, these same qualities I heard with the HD600, but with more layering and more open sound. Overall, my takeaway was that the sound has basically the same characteristics as what I heard with speakers. It's dynamic, exciting, and engaging throughout. But as you can imagine, recordings that were recorded with elevated treble are even worse with headphones than speakers. Sneak peek inside for those that are curious, you can find a clean and nicely put together PCB board and a 600 VA transformer that I've been mentioning. The Ragnarok 2 also features the Nexus gain stage, which according to Schiit Audio allows you to get the same amount of performance in both balanced and single-ended inputs. Now, I found this quite interesting since they said the same thing about the Bifrost 2 DAC I reviewed, and I played around with both the balanced and the single-ended inputs on the Ragnarok 2, and I found that there were literally almost no difference whatsoever between the two inputs. Now, the addition of the both balanced and single-ended pre-outs is also very nice. This allows you to use subwoofers or use this unit as just a preamplifier or a preamplifier and a DAC or phono stage in case of a fully loaded. Now, in the front of the amplifier, you get a nice volume knob with 128 steps of relay attenuator for precise volume adjustment, which honestly feels really darn nice to turn. Now, there is something you may want to note about this volume knob, and it's not so much of a caveat as it has to do with its design, but it makes clicky sounds when the adjustment of the volume is done. Now, that's due to the relay, and many higher end components do this as well, like MSB and Kinky Studio, to name a few. It personally didn't bother me, but it may bother you, so I thought it may be worth noting. There's also this button to switch between 2, 8, and 25 gain settings, which is basically low, medium, and high gain. And it takes about 8 to 10 seconds before it lets you switch between different gains, and I believe this is a well thought out design where it prevents accidents when people press the gain button 2 times by accident. There's also a button to activate both the headphone section or the speaker section or both at the same time, and a button to switch between the different inputs. As for gain settings, I stayed mostly at lower gain if possible. Lower the gain, the better the performance, and the lower the noise floor from my experience. But for most speakers, I had to go either to the medium gain or high gain because the low gain in volume was just too low. Now, with the Sennheiser HD600 and the Odyssey LCD3 headphones I used as well, I had to use medium gain because the low gain was just a little too low in volume for me. Just a word of caution, when you are switching between gain settings, keep the volume knob all the way down to prevent accidents. And yes, you finally get a remote with the Ragnarok 2. And no, it's not just the volume adjustment, it also has input selection, gain, speaker, headphone selector, and mute. It's a complete remote. And I'm pretty happy that Schiit Audio decided to make a complete remote like this one for the Ragnarok. So overall, I think the Ragnarok 2 packs a lot of punch as an integrated amplifier and really improved a lot both aesthetically and sonically from the original Ragnarok. It's a component I would love to personally own and would recommend to those that liked what I described in this video. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.